The biggest mistake you've ever made? Write in the comments what you think about it. What was the biggest fuck-up you've ever made? Enjoy the show. Story 1. My brother got me a job working with a landscaper and contractor he was friendly with. For like 3 weeks, they kept telling me they would use me, but they were waiting for a shipment of new windows to come in so that we could do the whole job in one go, the landscaping plus the window installs. I finally get the call 2 days ahead of the install date. Me and my bro walk down the street to the landscaper's house and load up with 3 other men into his Jeep. Me and my bro are still teenagers, so we're made to sit in the back of the Jeep. We spend the whole morning raking and pressure washing, mowing and digging up roots and rocks. We pick up a lot of trash revealed after the weeds in the backyard had been cut. We worked for like 6 hours straight in late July heat. Then the boss decided to take everyone to McDonald's for lunch. We eat, and I'm drowsy from the heat. I'm a little tubby at the time, so I'm a little lethargic after all that hard work. Boss drives us back to the job site and comments as we're nearing the driveway. "Oh, the windows were finally delivered." I hear the comment, but I'm in the back area, with my back leaning against the side as we pull in. I didn't look to see where the windows were or where the delivery truck stacked them. Boss says, "Everyone out and get to work." He then tells us to carry the windows around and set them next to the windows that are slated to be replaced. We all respond, "Yes, boss," and hop out of the Jeep. You know that adage about look before you leap? I didn't. He said to get to work, so I just grabbed the roll bar in the Jeep, stood up in the back, then vaulted over the side of the Jeep with one hand on the Jeep. I went right through the center of the stack of windows, breaking every last one of them. The rest of the work was canceled, and me and my brother were driven back and dropped off in front of our home. Never heard from the landscaper, and again, my brother loved to tell that story to embarrass me for years afterward. Story 2. My boyfriend is a tattoo artist, and he made a sleeve for me. Everything was going good till he wanted to put me a gray color, that means not black pigment as gray, but an actually color on my chest. In the bottle, the gray was actually gray, so I said yes, but when he put it into my skin, the color has changed, and as a result, it was bluish, greenish color, but not actually gray. To precise, I hate blue color. Green maybe is the color that I hate most. So I started to cry right there in the studio, asking him why he put the color that I hate most right on my chest. We should leave the studio together that day, and he was really angry on me for making him feel uncomfortable in front of our friends in the studio. After I tried to get used to it, but nothing helped. Now I'm doing a laser removal. We are still together, but this situation is such a trauma for me and for him. Every day I still thinking about it, proving a lot of self-shame, thinking that I'm the stupid one. Hope I'll fix my sleeve one day, and my life too. Story 3. Alcohol and my refusal to admit it. Destroyed and derailed 10 years of my life. I don't remember 95% of my 20s3 rehabs did nothing. It wasn't until I got my DUI last year, no one was injured, thank fuck, that I took a serious look at myself in the mirror and what I had done, and did, to not only myself, but those not just in my family, but also in my community, to realize I needed to change. Not tomorrow, but years from yesterday. Years. I went back to rehab again for a 4th time, at a different place. A place I would recommend to anyone who's been where I have. A place where rehab friends aren't just rehab friends. I talk to them every day. I go to meetings and have group therapy every week with them. They are now the friends I wish I had before all of this. I very much wanted to wait a month so I could get drunk again on my birthday as a last hurrah, but I knew that was the worst choice I could have made. I'm 15 months sober now. I will never again put anyone else's life in jeopardy due to negligence, self-centeredness, and carelessness. I could sit here and type of how shitty my life was and all that, but I'm not going to. I fucked up, I admit it. I will not hide from it, and I still have learning to do from it. I'm not who I was 15 months ago, and while that's the biggest fuck-up I've ever had, it's also the biggest accomplishment of my life. My sister and my niece are back in my life, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. I can't change my past, but I sure as hell will make sure my present and future will be something I can say I'm proud of. Story 4. This is gonna sound so horrible, but not telling the doctors and nurses to pull the plug on my then GF. I had no idea what kind of monster she truly was and how many lives she had ruined and how much she got off on it. I saved her life, but she ultimately sent me to my doom. Got arrested for trying to help her during a relapse BC. She told the cops I kidnapped her and beat the hell out of her. Faced life in prison but got a pretty strict probation. Then for the next year she made 3 attempts on my life and numerous bogus allegations to prosecution to have me sent back to jail, including the day I got off probation. To this day, the total number of lives she ruined is unknown, but I can count at least 20 that I know of for certain. Story 5. My roommate in the military, who happened to be a really good friend of mine, had his brother visiting. His brother asked me if I wanted to smoke some spice. This was back when spice wasn't a huge thing. I smoked with his brother and my roommate turned me in. I was then questioned by military detectives, and I gave in and just told them. Wish I would have asked for a lawyer, but I was too young to know what to do in that situation. I was kicked out. Story 6. At work, it's not a fuck-up if I can reverse it without anyone knowing. Honestly, it would be slipping on muddy sidewalk as I'm falling backwards. I thought throwing myself forward was a good idea, as I could catch the fall better. Split second, I managed to switch the backwards fall into a forward fall, and by doing that, hit an asphalt edge straight over right leg, severing most of 2 muscles. It's been almost 3 years and I'm still in recovery. If I just had relaxed and fell backwards, my pants shirt would have been dirty. Story 7. Hooked up with a coworker after getting to know each other for a month. It was love at first sight for both of us. Immaturity and massive stupidity, thanks to ego and pride, froze each other out when I didn't go find her after she witnessed her friend being pulled from life support about a week into things. Hell, that's not even the biggest fuck-up. The big one is not pushing to connect again the 3 months we worked together afterwards when it was obvious she needed me as we were inseparable and thick as thieves despite what happened. The even bigger one was losing my mind though and doing all sorts of shit that should have landed me a restraining order. And yet somehow we're together again the last month or so because she's really seeing the change in my character and actions. She came to realize she asked too much of me too early when she knew I needed time as she's my first girlfriend. Story 8. Fought my dad. He ended up breaking his leg and used all of his sick leave that he was going to cash out for upon retirement, which was a significant amount of money for him. It eats me up every damn day. I apologized and want to say I'm sorry pretty much every day that I am alive. I was drunk that night, and I stopped drinking about a year after it happened. Been sober for 5 years now. I want his forgiveness, but it's just a completely different relationship now. He still says I love you and things like that, but doesn't feel as heartfelt anymore. Story 9. In hindsight, it's pretty mild. Professional fuck-up. Years ago, I worked in finance and had just passed all my licensing and was able to buy and sell stocks for clients. First time, I was given a list of positions and told to sell the checked-off ones. I don't know if I wasn't listening or what I was thinking, but I started selling off all the positions. I had to run to the compliance manager and tell him immediately. I was in tears, very young, and he was so nice about it. He bought me a Coke and told me to take a walk around the building. It happens to everyone, he said. I'm sure I've had bigger fuck-ups, but this one definitely stands out. Story 10. Not entirely my fuck-up, but I could have prevented it if I paid more attention. Software Engineering Edition. Testing a process that sends out letters to a very big part of the customer portfolio, informing them they are behind on payments. Somehow, some other developer switched an environment variable to point the test machine to production. I know they shouldn't even be physically connected in the first place. I didn't check. A process that sends out an email to a customer. Process manager has some built-in retry mechanism in case servers are down or something else goes wrong. Exception occurs after sending the email. Database executes a rollback, thus neutralizing the retry count, but still maintaining the label process step to be executed. This went on overnight, and a handful of customers ended up with 5,000 emails in their inbox. Company domain ended up on the spam list for a week. Story 11. Almost killed my 2 best mates and myself. Sober. 2 years ago, I was 16 and still on my learner's license. I had a sleepover with my mates at my house, and we thought it would be a good idea to steal the keys to my dad's ute and go on a cruise. We did exactly that, went to Macus and got a feed, went and put petrol in the car, and just had a good time. I was driving back home and I was stopped at a red light and was turning right. Light goes green, and I accidentally oversteer into a skid. Then I make the fucked up decision to slam on the brakes. Then I lose all control and crash into a pole. The pole landed on the car and took out the whole driver's side part of the tub and smashed the back window. The pole was about 5 centimeters away from hitting the door, killing my friends and I instantly. Pretty shortly after the accident, I dropped out from school because my mental health fucked itself, and months of my life were consumed with eating shitty food 8 Red Bulls a day and playing Fortnite all day. Story 12. I am a winemaker. In my first year of apprenticeship 10 years ago, it was shortly after grape harvest, I was told to stir a certain barrel of wine. You do it with a stirring machine, pretty powerful, but easy to use by just screwing it into a certain hole in the barrel. I worked in a cellar with around 100 barrels. Each had a minimum of 2,000 liters. Screwed it tight, pushed the power button, and climbed on the ladder to look inside if it's stirring properly. I immediately realized I was working on the wrong barrel. It was in the middle of fermentation, because I saw the carbon dioxide coming up pretty fast. I jumped from the ladder and knew I could just watch the catastrophe happen. You see, if you stir a fermenting wine with a strong stirring machine, it is like throwing a Mentos in a bottle of Coke. In my case, only 3,000 times bigger. I've never seen such power and force in my life, just rushing against the ceiling in seconds. Nearly half of the wine came out and disappeared down the drain. I was covered simpletly in it. End of the story. Nobody ever found out what happened because it was a mixture of leftovers from every other batch in the cellar. If a barrel was full, the remaining amount got in it. It was called the whore because everyone could go in there. And there was not a single note how much was inside of it. It was full. So I fucked up the whore of the cellar. Story 13. Met a guy and we clicked instantly. It was all fun and we both were flirting. Once we got drunk and a little too cozy, nothing more. I left that night. A week later, he tells me how his ex had passed away and he needed medical treatment to get over that phase. I was fully supportive of him and I encouraged him to take therapy, reassuring him. I did all of that as a good friend would. I have always been a huge supporter of mental health, and I will always be there for the people whom I know are struggling. I have also dealt with mental health issues myself, so I generally know how to deal with people, especially when they are having attacks, because I have been there and done that. I have a motherly side to me, so every time I see someone who is suffering, my first instinct is to assure them, to make them feel safe. Few days later, he tells me how he thinks he is ready to marry me, and that I was the first person who has ever shown him this amount of support. I was taken aback, because it's not even been a month of knowing each other, and honestly, I am not ready for anything even remotely close to a serious relationship. My past relationship was an abusive one, and after finally leaving him, I had decided to take at least a few years off. Now, I feel terribly guilty that my actions lead him to think otherwise, and he is so much dependent on me, I cannot even come out. I have fucked up terribly in my life, but this person makes me feel like this is the absolute worst. I also feel like this is not love from his side either, but he is obsessed with me. He cannot and will not let me go. I feel my old anxiety coming back. I have told him this thing, but he is not ready to accept it. He says stuff like, "You are suppressing your emotions. I know you like me, but you are scared of my past." I am not. I've been upfront about it, but he is still stuck on that drunk night when we got cozy. He also cannot stand the fact that I talk to other guys and gets visibly jealous when he sees me talking to someone else. He also for some reason thinks I am a virgin, which again, I am not. I am not ashamed, but I have been with multiple guys, and when I told him, he says, "I know you are lying to push me away." I am not. I'm not even sure what to do now. I fucked up real bad this time. Story 14. Woke up 1 hour late for my midterm exam in my second year of medical school. We only had 2 exams that semester, and those were the only things that counted for a grade. I had studied for 18 hours straight the day before, trying to make sure I covered absolutely everything, and I went to bed completely exhausted. I had both my alarm clock and phone alarm set to wake me up 3 hours before the exam started, and I somehow managed to sleep through both alarms, even though they were very loud. I was somehow able to convince the administrators that I was in a car accident on my way to the exam, and I was allowed to retake the exam 4 days later. It was a completely different exam to prevent any sort of answer sharing. I'm not proud that I had to lie, but if I didn't, I would have failed the entire semester. Story 15. Worked for a window company and was doing a visual inspection of the incoming glass for defects. Because I noticed something was already suspicious, was a lead for receiving at the time, and leaned my hand onto a piece that wasn't properly strapped in by the manufacturer, sent about 40 panes of glass down to the floor, worth about $10K. Immediately told my supervisor as I was strapping on my glass handling gear. No punishment, but it put the line behind a day and they had to work the weekend because of it. Needless to say, I was there also to change out their glass racks on the forklift. Story 16. I had a roommate my senior year of college who was someone that considered me a good friend of hers. I never really liked her that much, and she didn't treat me very well, was always putting me down in front of others, etc. One day, I had enough of her shenanigans and decided I wanted to move out, and I started talking to the other roommate about it. The other roommate proceeded to start spreading shit about her on an anonymous forum, as well as to other people on campus. I try not to gossip anymore or get other people involved in interpersonal issues I'm having. Biggest mistake of my life, and I still feel terrible for my ex-roommate. She wasn't a good friend to me, but she didn't deserve that at all. Story 17. When I was 17, I helped out a friend clearing out his grandpa's old home. Grandpa had a big house with a lot of stuff. In the garden, there was a shed with old portable propane gas tanks. Like 5 of them. We had to bring them to a special dump where they would get demolished. However, there still was some gas in them. When we drove to the dumpster site to get rid of all of this, I noticed a system that separated all types of junk garbage, etc. It would all end up in these massive grinders that could grind anything. I went with my friend and his dad to unload all the junk, and without thinking, I put one of these propane tanks on these kind of assembly lines that were all in motion to get junk to those grinders. They were very long and slow, which was my luck. I overlooked the place where I had to store the propane tanks. When we just left the place, there was a massive bang in one of the grinders and fire. Alarm bells started to sound and the whole place went into lockdown due to the fire. We left, and my friend and his dad were wondering what had happened. I knew, but felt too embarrassed to admit what I had done. Story 18. I maintain machinery in the factory I work in. A couple years ago, we were done running a machine and did all of the normal procedures and such to shut it down. The final part of shutting it down is removing all of the power. In this case, removing the power is merely to save the $5 it costs to run a blinking light and some red bulbs on a console. So nobody was very worried about it. I happened to be working nearby. I've been in this factory for close to 10 years, so I'm aware of what happens when the power is shut off. We call an electrician out, who goes over to the panel and turns a switch. I can handle that. So I go over to the panel, find the switch, and wait. There's 2 of them, so I deduce which switch is right and I turn it to off. The entire production line shuts down. All of it. The whole line. About 20 machines. And when I mean shut down, I mean all power to everything. It didn't just stop running, it killed all power to all of it all at once. And mind you, everyone working on these machines has no idea what I have just done. Turned the wrong switch. Guess I needed that electrician. Story 19. When I was like 12, I was on a Minecraft server that had microtransactions and I had zero self-control in my parents' PayPal password, so I decided to buy myself some stuff on the server. Well, when you click on the microtransaction, it buys it immediately, the item without any confirmation that you actually bought it. So naturally, I thought the game was bugged and clicked. Buy about 45 times, coming out to an amount of around $1,200. You can only imagine the amount of trouble I got in because of that. So sad it makes me feel weird and sad even typing this. I hope he is happy and in peace in heaven. Story 20. Okay, so y'all know when you were little and you wanted to help your parents out? Maybe you tossed water on their cars and called it a car wash or helped them bring in the groceries without being asked. Well, this is the mindset that got me and my brother in some hot water. So I was like 10 or 11 maybe, and me and my brother decided we were going to help our parents by making the house nice and pretty. We went into our dad's shop and found several cans of bright red spray paint and proceeded to spray the house, my dad's truck, the boat, the shed, the lawn, and even got into the road a bit. By the end of it, I think me and my brother went through like 15 cans of spray paint give or take and had covered everything in a nice shade of red. My parents got home from work, and that was the day my dad handmade the paddle he would use to spank me and my brother whenever we acted up from then on. However, he didn't actually spank us that day. I asked him why years later out of curiosity, and his response was, "Honestly, son, I was afraid I would actually hurt you and your brother if I used that paddle that day." Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.